and welcome to Inside Iraq. I'm Jassim Azzawi. In 2007, Iraq's fortune oscillated between utter despair and hopes of salvation. The surge stemmed the violence, but failed to stitch the country together. Al-Qaeda was routed, but not fully defeated. Iraqi politicians played the blame game and paid lip service to national reconciliation. So how will 2007 impact the year ahead? Will Iraq see the light at the end of the tunnel, or be smashed by an approaching train? Nadeem Baba reports.
The US military is hailing it as a major success story, but one that brings with it new challenges for 2008. According to American figures, the total number of attacks in Iraq dropped by around 60% between March and December. Whatever the reasons, the US has been linking it to the troop surge announced at the start of the year.
I think what was really valuable about the surge was not so much the extra numbers of troops which the Americans brought in. What was more important was the fact that General Petraeus brought with him a new doctrine, new tactics, which actually understood counterinsurgency, and that was the key to success.
2007 also saw a new phenomenon: Sunni militias turning against Al-Qaeda's local wing. There are an estimated 70,000 fighters in the various groups collectively known as the Awakening Council. The main questions now are for how long will they cooperate in the fight against Al-Qaeda, and can they eventually be reintegrated into Iraqi society? The US and Iraqi governments are set to spend over $300 million on job creation and training. Washington would also like to see at least 20,000 fighters join the regular security forces. But Nouri al-Maliki's government has long viewed these fighters with suspicion, and it's loath to integrate them. Another headache for 2008, refugees returning to Iraq. Whether it's the drop in violence or the harsh conditions they face in places such as Damascus, Baghdad's worried that they'll add to already considerable sectarian tensions. Another unknown is how the expected reduction in US troop numbers will affect the Iranian influence on the ground. When British troops handed over Basra in the south to Iraqi forces, the provincial police chief reportedly said he'd been left with mayhem, complaining Shia militias were better armed than his own men. Muqtada al-Sadr commands the loyalty of most, though not all, the fighters that make up the Mahdi army. His political bloc quit Iraq's ruling alliance in September.
What the Iraqis must do is to try to ensure, and the leaders are responsible for this, ensure the militias don't work their own agenda. Muqtada al-Sadr, for example, has been longing for the last 4 or 5 years to be seen as a mainstream, serious politician. Now is his chance to be so. Now is his chance to say, I'm in the real political arena now, not just a sort of maverick militia leader.
March 2008 will mark the 5th anniversary of the US-led invasion of Iraq. The occasion could inspire more Iraqis to place their trust in institutions like the National Army, but it could also serve as a painful reminder of how everyday life remains a struggle. Nadeem Baba for Inside Iraq.
While we do not have a crystal ball to gaze into the future, we do have two experts on US-Iraqi affairs. I'm delighted to welcome Ambassador Lawrence Butler, Deputy Assistant Secretary of State in the Bureau of Near Eastern Affairs, and Scott Ritter, former UN Weapons Inspector. Gentlemen, welcome to Inside Iraq. Mr. Ritter, let me start with you. We are only 3 days away from 2008, a far cry from January, during the abyss when the Iraq enterprise was really looking at disaster. Have we turned a corner, or is this just another false dawn?
Well, first of all, let's applaud the work of General Petraeus and the United States military. Whether you were for the surge or against the surge, and I'm on record as being against putting more troops into Iraq, one needs to recognize that there has been considerable effort made to reduce the level of violence in Iraq, which is one of the cornerstone elements of achieving the stability that the United States maintains is necessary for the Iraqi government to be able to govern on its own without this considerable American military presence. However, I also think we need to recognize that the surge is, frankly speaking, superficial. Yes, the violence has dropped. But, you know, Iraq, as you rightly pointed out, in January of 2007, was a sucking chest wound, to use a military parlance. Grievously wounded, serious problems, and all we've done is put a superficial bandage over this. We haven't resolved the fundamental problems. There's still a huge problem with the Sunni element in Iraq. What do we do with these 70,000 militiamen who are now working with the United States? I dare say they're not working for the United States. They're working with the United States to achieve their own objectives, which are incompatible with the government of Nouri al-Maliki. What do we do about the Turks and the Kurds up north? That bastion of stability that we've been lauding for so many years is now falling apart. And of course, the cornerstone of the reduction of violence is the unilateral ceasefire of Muqtada al-Sadr. What happens when he decides that it's no longer in his interest to maintain this ceasefire? We haven't resolved anything. The level of violence has dropped, but not necessarily because of the infusion of troops. It's because many of the elements in Iraq are taking a pause to reevaluate and consolidate. And I dare say that 2008 may very well be the most violent year in this unfortunate epoch known as the American occupation of Iraq.
If that is the case, Ambassador Butler, this relative improvement in security and in other fields comes at a considerable cost, not only to the Iraqis, but also to the American people and taxpayers. Critics say this cost is deplorable.
Yeah, Jasmine, the only point of agreement I'm going to have with what Scott just said was to applaud and acknowledge both the efforts of General Petraeus, General Odierno, and the U.S. troops, especially the additional troops that came in as part of the Baghdad security plan. But then to go on to say that it neglects the other elements of the surge, of which were political and diplomatic and economic, that went along the same time. In addition to 30,000 additional troops, we increased the number of provincial reconstruction teams by 150%. There are now 25 of these teams around the country. Some are co-located with brigade combat teams. And this is, together we've had a synergy of effort and focus which goes beyond simply the kinetic efforts to bring down violence, which has clearly been successful, but then to see things happen differently in a more positive way on the ground. So while in some ways I would agree that in 2006, Iraq was a gravely wounded nation, 2007, you saw the battlefield surgeons, if you would. Iraq is going through, it's in a post-Stalinist transition away from this government of Saddam Hussein. It's in a transition to a market-oriented economy and is trying to find its own way for an Iraqi-style democracy.
That is 4 years too late. There isn't much economy. The unemployment is over 50%. And the political process in paralysis.
Jasmine, I'm going to disagree with you on that one. In the real world, it's never too late. Based on what you just said, we should all roll over and kind of go into a cave and come out and see what's left 4 years from now. We are where we are, and at the end of 2007, we are in a much better place than where we were at the start of 2007. As you said at the beginning, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you that 2008 will be the most peaceful year in existence or the most violent year in existence, but I do know.
Well, let us take one issue that has been very successful for the U.S. administration and General Petraeus' strategy, Scott Ritter. Al-Qaeda has been dealt a major blow in 2007. Do you share the administration view that 2008, perhaps they will be defeated completely, 100%?
I certainly hope so. Al-Qaeda is not a natural outgrowth of Iraq. It didn't exist in Iraq prior to Saddam Hussein's regime being removed from power. It made its way into Sunni society when the United States decapitated the Sunni tribes, delegitimizing traditional elders, the clerics. And into this vacuum, this chaos, this anarchy, grew Al-Qaeda. And now we see, through the Sunni awakening, the Sunni tribes reasserting their authority over the western provinces in Anbar and in the suburbs of Baghdad and elsewhere. And we're seeing the Sunni tribes taking matters in their own hands with considerable assistance from the United States. I applaud the work of the United States military in this regard. The one true threat that exists in Iraq to the security not only of Iraq but the Middle East and the United States is this cancer called Al-Qaeda. And it is being routed now, and we need to understand that in order to continue the defeat of this alien element called Al-Qaeda inside Iraq, that we must continue to provide meaningful and sufficient support to the Sunni tribes. What I'm concerned about, though, is that at the moment of the Sunni tribal success, that we have a fundamental disagreement with the government of Nouri al-Maliki.
Ambassador Butler,
Yeah,
there is an implication that the U.S. claiming credit for something it did not achieve against Al-Qaeda. It came on the heel of the uprising of Al-Anbar awakening against Al-Qaeda.
First, we're not taking credit for what the Sunni tribes and the Sunni awakening movement have done to Al-Qaeda. Scott missed something there. The decapitation of the Sunni tribes in Al-Anbar province is actually caused by Al-Qaeda a couple years ago when they stood up and tried to take on Al-Qaeda in 2004, 2005. It's the sons and the brothers of the tribal leaders from that period who came back to life one more time, and with a different counterinsurgency doctrine led by General Odierno and General Petraeus, out in the West, followed their lead as they took on Al-Qaeda. And I have to say, this was an integrated team effort. As Al-Qaeda left Anbar, they went up the Diyala River Valley to Baquba. They went up the Tigris and Euphrates.
Yes.
They're being pushed away.
Let me take a break, and when we come back, I'll be asking Ambassador Butler whether this improved security can be sustained. Stay with us.
There will be the ongoing challenges of reconciliation. And if there is a single overarching issue that will determine the future of this country, that is, for me, in one word: Ryan Crocker, U.S. Ambassador to Iraq.